joining us. I have here with me Brian Walness, CTO of Smokey Bones. Brian, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Awesome. I know you guys have been busy this past year with the digital transformation and powering up your off-premises operations. I wanted to talk to you. What was the impetus for the technology overhaul at Smokey Bones?
Great question. And again, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. Really, my intention for joining the Smokey Bones organization is to make the brand and our virtual brands a leader in the casual dining industry. And I believe through the investments that we're going to discuss, we are now closer to the front of the competitive set. And really to achieve this, we were focused on our anytime and anywhere vision, which squarely puts our guests in control of their dining experience. So to answer your question more directly, the impetus of the tech overhaul was really around providing our guests options and multiple ways to order our Smokey Bones food and engage with the brand. So this, of course, includes digital ordering, as well as providing additional service methods such as curbside and delivery. We wanted to get there, but our infrastructure wasn't going to allow us to enable this. The impetus was providing choice, service, and hospitality through digital platforms to our guests. And to get there, we needed to overhaul our infrastructure.
And it seems these days that customers are really in charge of their own customer experience, whatever that is, and being able to offer a well-rounded wallet of options for consumers is really the way to go. Can you tell us in regards to timeline, were these plans in the works before March of 2020?
They were. So when I joined the organization in July of 2019, first 30, 45 days was just a needs-based assessment to really understand what our current infrastructure and technology requirements are, and then what we ultimately needed to, really achieve this anytime, anywhere vision. We did have these plans in place, and we started to execute against the infrastructure overhaul and update. And that really kind of was completed in roughly about 6 months' time. And we executed that or finished that project in March of 2020. But then we had everything else lined up in order to start essentially monetizing some of those investments. So they were in the works. And certainly when COVID became a reality, it certainly accelerated a lot of these strategies and implementations.
Sure. During the pandemic, most all restaurants pivoted to off-premises. Could you tell us how your off-premises changed, and do you expect that trend to continue now that we are heading out of the pandemic?
Yeah, absolutely. Prior to the pandemic, I would estimate that our off-premise business was roughly about 20% of sales. And coming out of the pandemic, this has nearly doubled. It's certainly an important part of the business, both pre and now post. But what's really leading the charge and what's really exciting is our direct-to-consumer e-commerce business is really growing quite nicely, and it's tripled pre and post COVID. So I do expect off-premise to continue to grow steadily. And again, it goes back to what you said earlier. We're providing the guest choice, right? Obviously, please come in and dine in. That's an option. You can also order for off-premise either by calling in or through our websites through multiple service methods. So pick up, curbside, or have it delivered.
That's awesome. Were there any challenges that you were facing that this tech overhaul addressed?
Yeah, primarily we were really constrained on how quickly we could release technology that was both stable and scalable. Our infrastructure was a bit aged, so we really had limited options just in terms of which technology providers or solutions we could work with and what it could ultimately mean to our business. So rather than be constrained, we decided to invest in it, the infrastructure, get to a platform that was stable and scalable that we could then participate in more modern software. That was really our biggest constraint that fortuitously we executed prior to COVID, which really put us in a position to strength when COVID became a reality.
That's great. It sounds like you're in a good place now with what's going on. In regards to tech solutions, do you have anything on your to-do list for this year?
Yeah, on the to-do list, looking ahead, we are quickly becoming a much more data-driven organization. We do collect a lot of first-party data. We have a very robust CRM strategy, but we recognize that we can do more. So just using this data to become a little bit more targeted with our communications and offers out to our guests is going to be a big part of the second half of this year and certainly moving forward. And then also recognizing that the dining room occasion is resuming and people are coming back to the dining rooms. We're looking at table management technology or the ability to take reservations or join a digital wait list. But all in, it's really just allowing us to manage our dining rooms a bit better and
Mhm.
just provide more communication to the guests in terms of when their table is ready and just kind of keeping them in the loop.
Mhm. So when it comes to data, I think restaurants of all sizes are, have an abundance of data. Are there tools that you use that help you harness the power of data that you'd like to share?
The tools that we use are actually really more innate to some of the email service providers and SMS providers that we use
Mm.
to just segment the data. So we actually at this point don't use too many third-party tools in order to
Mhm.
slice and dice the data. It's really just using what has already been, kind of in our tool chest to begin with that we believe was under leveraged to start. Once we learned how powerful some of the tools that we have already been licensing were, we're certainly now resourcing that to make most of those investments. I do believe in the future, we'll probably get to a point where we may look at some additional analytics and data tools to kind of help go a little bit deeper or potentially even automate it. But
Mhm.
for right now, we are pretty pleased in terms of what is already at our disposal, using the data, segmenting the data, creating these unique audiences, pairing it with communication, and then measuring.
Awesome. When it comes to that customer dine-in experience, what role does contactless technologies play?
Yeah, it's a great question. One of the technologies that we did pilot throughout COVID was contactless pay. We still have it in pilot at a number of our locations. And that was really the ability for the guests to scan a QR code, pull back the guest check, and quickly pay securely. What we found is that some guests prefer that, and some guests were okay still providing a credit card and paying in a more traditional format. So
Mhm.
I think it kind of goes back to where we started, which is really providing the guest choice
Right.
and the option to pay either one way or the other. I certainly think that's going to be an area where we're going to continue to invest and continuing to explore. But I think it's also a matter of how can you make the pay at table solution maybe even have more utility moving forward. But I think contactless is certainly going to be, here to stay. It's just a matter of how brands use it to amplify the dining experience and don't just make it as something that they're forced to do.
Mhm.
It needs to be additive and provide a good guest experience.
Awesome. I was talking with another operator and they're doing both. You can scan this QR code to order and pay, or you can say, hey, I'd rather speak with someone and have the server expedite my order and my experience in the restaurant. Do you expect that Smoky Bones will do something similar, giving customers that option to be the driver of their?
Yeah, great question. And we've certainly discussed it as an organization and really where we landed currently right now, both with our pilot and how we're thinking about the technology, is to make it more of a way to expedite the payment process
Sure.
versus a way to kind of supplant maybe the hospitality or dining expectations
Mhm.
for our guests when they choose to come to Smoky Bones. We have a wonderful crew. We have absolutely fantastic folks taking orders, and that's part of our experience. That's part of our brand. So we absolutely do not want the technology to interfere with that. In fact, we really wanted to kind of prop it up and make it even better. So we're all about guest experience. We're all about hospitality. We took the approach to use the technology on the back half of the experience
Mhm.
to quickly expedite the payment process
Sure.
versus using it in the upfront of the dining experience or
Sure.
ordering it versus actually having a dialogue
Mhm.
with our crew.
Right, and that being able to pay at the table can really increase the table turns, reduce the wait times. Because once you're ready to go, you don't want to sit around waiting for 7 minutes for a check or your credit
That's
card to
exactly right.
return. You mentioned the importance of delivering a good guest experience with the wonderful servers and staff at Smoky Bones. A lot of restaurants right now are dealing with a labor shortage. Are there ways that Smoky Bones has adapted operations or added automation to help with those types of shortfalls
Yeah, good question.
or added?
That function does fall outside of my scope,
Sure.
so I'm unable to provide too many specifics. But what I can say is that from a technology side, we are leaning into our HRIS systems to better understand what we can do to optimize the process and
Mhm.
optimize the experience to ultimately make it easier and more streamlined and overall more efficient
Mhm.
for our staff to hire, for prospective employees to join the brand, and just make that the most simplified and seamless process overall. Some of the current challenges have really awakened the opportunity to optimize this process, and we're certainly leaning in.
Yeah, absolutely. Wrote a story last week about drone delivery for El Pollo Loco. When you think about, future technologies that are, coming in the future, are there any technologies that you're kind of anxious about deploying?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the areas that I think is really interesting is just around autonomous vehicles, or
Mhm.
the ability to obviously have these different vehicles make these different deliveries, without a human intervention or actually driving the vehicle. I think is really interesting. And there's been a few big brands that have kind of leaned in and are kind of helping shape that industry.
Mhm.
I think that's very exciting. Certainly, probably maybe 3 years or more away from becoming a bit more mainstream, but we need to start to understand what the technology can do for us today and get those data points, get those learnings and evolve. I think that's really interesting. I also simply feel that there's just a lot of technology around just optimizing the off-premise technology or the off-premise occasion. Simply knowing when your guest is en route to pick up the order, knowing when they're in your parking lot and being able to expedite that order to them. It seems very mainstream today, but a lot of folks, it's still a problem and it's an area of opportunity. So,
Mhm.
that's one of the areas that we're certainly focusing on well is we have the infrastructure in place. We are executing it well today, but how can we execute it even better in the future? And
Mhm.
what is the role of technology to really just connect the guest with our kitchen and making sure that there's great communication between the two?
Absolutely. And that really helps create a more seamless guest experience too, and more convenient for the consumer and less stressful for employees. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I think this has been a great dialogue and a great conversation. I think we're very proud, at Smoky Bones, and just in terms of
Mhm.
how far we've come and how quickly, we've
Mhm.
executed. Again, our focus is really to be a leader in casual dining, and through these investments and through some of these other improvements, both to our websites, our virtual brands, and all of what we're doing around e-commerce,
Mhm.
we firmly believe that we are now closer to the front of our competitive set and
Mhm.
executing this anytime, anywhere vision, which is
Mhm.
firmly putting our guests in control of their dining experience. 2 years has gone by really quick, and I'm really excited about what's ahead.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
So Brian, I did want to ask you, do you think that the virtual brands will is something that you guys will continue for the foreseeable future?
I do. We've been a little bit of a pioneer, I believe,
Mhm.
with virtual brands, and there's certainly a number of examples in the market.
Mhm.
From our perch, they are very incremental
Mhm.
and very additive to our existing business. And I think
Sure.
it's fantastic because we've had such a robust menu for so many years and we've
Mhm.
had so many great products on it above and beyond barbecue. So, our two virtual brands are the wing experience, focusing on fantastic jumbo wings, 50 flavors, and the burger experience, our burger concept.
Mhm.
And they're performing very well.
That's awesome. I think a lot of consumers will embrace going back to dine out, but continue to order off prem because no one really likes to cook all that much anymore, day in, day out. So I think,
Yeah,
yeah, it's going to continue to be an option for many consumers going
I agree
forward.
with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when you got a great product, wings and burgers. I mean, those are classics. So
Classic, great products at great prices. We're very proud of the brands and how they're performing and kind of what we're going to be doing next with them.
thanks again, Brian. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. All right, bye bye.